to this String King Guitar Works video. Today we're going to replace the neck pickup in this Gretsch Electromatic. So the main problem we're going to have with this job is getting the controls out. So what I need to do, I think based on the way this is wired, which I have to check, is get this potentiometer out through the F hole here and wire in a different pickup. I've got to disconnect this one, which I think probably goes directly to this switch, this pot rather, and then I've got to get the pot back in, and obviously that's not always straightforward, although there is quite a bit of room here, so it's going to be a bit less difficult than it would be on some guitars. So first of all, let's get the knob off, for which I need a Allen key, and miraculously I picked the right one out of the box. So this should just come off quite easily if I loosen the locking nut, he says, and there we go. So that's the knob off. Next thing I need is a spanner to take the locking nut off here. I'll just get that. So this is the tool that I usually use for loosening and tightening potentiometers. It's got 3 different sizes, so it works for the CTS American style pots, the imperial size, and it also works for the Far East size as well, the alpha pots, etc. So hopefully, I imagine that this is going to be the American size, and it is. So we'll just loosen that off. And depending on how this is wired, I might be able to get that pot out on its own, or it may be a case of getting the whole lot out, but it looks like I might be able to get this one out. So let's see. Actually, before I do that, what I'm going to do is put some masking tape around the F hole so I don't mark it. I don't think this is a nitro finish, but what I'm going to do is use this low tack masking tape, which should come off without taking any of the paint with it. I think there's a bit of paranoia in the tech world about taking the paint off with masking tape, because I've never actually seen that happen, but there's always going to be a first time, and I don't want to spend hours repairing a finish, respraying possibly, if I don't have to. So what I'm actually doing, there's some weird banging noises in the background. I'm not really sure what's going on in one of the workshops adjacent to this one, but sounds like someone is knocking in some pilings. I don't think that's what it is, but that's what it sounds like. So, a little bit of tape on here. And that should be enough to... That's a little bit there. That should be enough to prevent me scratching the surface of this guitar. So, back to getting the pot out. There it is. It's not an easy one to get out. It's just a funny old shape. I think I'll need to take it out this way around. There we go. Fantastic. Now, I don't know for sure, but it looks to me like the wire is coming straight from the pickup. That's fantastic news. It's a 2 connector wire. It's got the braided metal shielding on it, so that's great. That means what I can do essentially is just desolder this, solder the new pickup on. Now, something's come disconnected from here, so there's another wire in there that takes that off to a switch, or probably to this potentiometer up here, but we'll dig that out and we'll solder that back on. So that's the first bit done. Next bit is a bit of soldering, so I need to get my soldering iron out. Right, the first thing we've got to do is desolder the back of the pot. So I've got my soldering iron as hot as it will go, and hopefully it's going to melt the solder on the back of the pot, and there it goes. So we've got 2 wires soldered on there. A huge amount of solder on this, much more than I would normally suspect to see on a factory soldered product. So maybe this has already had some work done in it. So we've got that off. I'm just going to turn my soldering iron down for a minute, and we can get the pickup out. So that's the old pickup, and it's got a shim, so we can use that again for the new one. So when we put the new pickup in, we'll put the shim in, and hopefully that'll support it. So here's my pot. This is a CTS pot, so it's a decent quality pot. It should be fine. But what I'm going to do is spray some of this contact cleaner into the hole in the pot. Just a tiny amount. No need to flood it out. And then I'm just going to move the wiper, which is inside, across the screen back to front, and that should clear any dirt or debris that's sitting around in there. So that's that. Now I need to get my new pickup out, but I think before I do that, what I'm going to try and do is find the wire that goes from the pot up to this, actually up to this selector switch, which I think is how it's wired. So bear with me while I do that, and I'll be back in a minute. Okay, so I've tested the wiring. What I found inside were 2 loose wires, a red and a black. The black is earth, and the red is the connection that goes from this pot to the selector switch. The thing about these 2 wires is that they were not long enough to allow me to put the pot back through this hole, which is the only one that it fits through. So what I've got to do, or what I have done, is made them a bit longer. So I've just added some extra bits of wire on, soldered it together, put some shrink insulation tape on there, and so we've got a little bit of extra room to get the pot back through here. So now what I'm going to do is just solder these connections, and we are ready to put it back into the hole. So first of all, let's get this one done, bend that a bit so that it stays. So let's get this one soldered. So heat up the joint, get a bit of solder going, and it should flow into the joint quite nicely, which it does. Perfect. Okay. Next one is a little bit more tricky, because we've got to solder the back of this braided wire onto the back of this pot. So what I need to do is just tape it down to the pot so it doesn't move. Whack my soldering iron up to the hottest possible setting. Just waiting a second while it does that. I'm just going to tin it, and then I'm going to run a lot of solder onto the back of this wire so that we get a nice connection. So there we go, and the tapes come off. So I want to get that solder right round there, and it's not stuck. So these can be a little bit tricky, but we've got the first part done, which is to get the solder onto the wire. So let's get that tape stuck there. And now we can have another crack at this, hopefully. Some people are put off by soldering this wire to the back of the pot, but it's not really that difficult as long as your iron is nice and hot. If you don't have a hot iron, you're really going to struggle doing this, because essentially the pot is like a large heat sink and it just soaks up all the heat from the iron and doesn't allow your solder to get hot. So you really need to invest in a very hot iron to get that job done. So that's done. That's all connected. And I'm just going to turn the iron off, turn my amp on, and we'll see if we've got a connection which makes a sound. There we go. And both. And just like that. Okay, job done. So all I've got to do now is get this pot back inside and then remove all this tape and stuff, and the job's done. What I've also done is I've got this star washer which stops the whole pot rotating inside and the wires coming off. I mean, that happens quite a lot with jack sockets, but it can also happen with pots. So this will lock the bottom of the pot inside to the wood on the back. The problem with it is what tends to happen is that as you're trying to get this in, it falls off. So I've just put a little bit of solder on just to stick that on so it's not going to fall off. So the way that we get this back in is to get a piece of wire round the top, and then we'll put the wire through this hole. We can get the pot in here and we pull the wire through. The wire also has the washer and the lock nut on it. Once we pulled it up through the hole, put the washer on, and we're finished. So I'm just going to peel that back a little bit. I get a little piece of wire. So I'm going to put the washer and the nut onto the wire the right way round. Is it the right way round? Is it that way round? That's that way round. And tied that off at that end. So now if we get this wire through the hole here, grab the other end of it, and basically all we need to do is wrap the bare copper around and that's not enough. So let's get the actual wire in there. So let's wrap it round and lock it. And we should be able to get that back up through the hole. It should pull through the hole. Let's see if it works. So first of all, I've got my, let's turn the amp off. I've got my wire back in the cavity. The pot goes in. Hopefully it squeezes through the gap, which it does. We pull the wire, making sure that the pot doesn't get trapped by the other wires that are in there. Actually, we can feel where it is because there's a little bit of space here, so it's handy because we can manipulate it a little bit to get it in the right position to go through the hole. And it's nearly there, and there it goes. So the pot's through. I can take the wire off now because I can hold it in place with my finger inside. It's not going to come off actually, which is how well it's stuck on there, which is great. There we go. Don't want the wire stuck in there. So now we've got our pot in. Do up. By hand. Try not to drop the spanner on the floor. Get my pot spanner. I'm just holding the back so it doesn't move. I don't think it's going to move anyway because I've got that star washer on the back. And I'm going to give it a bit of a tighten, not too much. If you too tighten it too much, sometimes there's a possibility that the spindle will pop out or something horrible will happen. So try not to do it too much, but you don't usually have to do it too much if you've got the star washer on the back, because that's going to lock it in place. And now we can take some of that tape off. Let's just check once more, just in case, just to make absolutely certain we've got the signal from that pickup. Yep, that's good. So that's all done. So all I've got to do now, push those wires back in there. Don't need them sticking out the hole. Take the tape off. And put the knob back on. I haven't got the lock Allen key here, so take it for granted that's what I'm going to do when we're off camera. But that's finished. That's how to get pickup changed on this kind of hollow body guitar. If you're lucky enough not to have to take out all of these parts, which is usually the case, but in this circumstance we've managed to avoid having to do that, so it's all good. So that's the end of this video on this Gretsch 5120 Electromatic, how to change the pickup and get the parts in and out of the cavity and into place so it actually works properly. So next time we'll be looking at a video on this fret press up here which we've just bought, and if you like the video please subscribe below and we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.